Geekonomy, the 29th of August. I'm going to start in Hebrew and then the episode itself is in English. So if you want to jump to the English part, to this conversation with Jonathan, just go forward 3 minutes. והיום הייתה לי את הזכות הגדולה לארח את דוקטור ג'ונתן היידט. ג'ונתן הוא אחד האינטלקטואלים הבולטים, אולי בעולם, בשנים האחרונות, מאז שכתב את הספרים הראשונים שלו, The Coddling of the American Mind and Why Are You Always Right. הוא בנה על עצמו שם. ג'ונתן הוא דוקטור לפסיכולוגיה מאוניברסיטת NYU, וגם הספר האחרון שלו עשה הרבה מאוד רעש, The Anxious Generation. הוא כותב על הנזק המתמשך והעצום שהרשתות החברתיות גורמות לצעירים. בספרים הקודמים הוא כתב על שיטות חינוך והנזק שהן עושות, שיטות חינוך מתירניות מדי, ומה שהם עשו לנוער האמריקאי, ועל ריבים אינטרנטיים ולמה הם לכאן או לשם. לשמחתי הייתה לי את האפשרות לשוחח איתו, לצערי לא היה לי הרבה זמן, היה לי רק 50 ומשהו דקות, אז לא יכלתי להיכנס יותר מדי לפינות ולפתוח יותר מדי דיונים, אז פשוט רציתי לתת לו את המקום לדבר ולהציג את הרעיונות שלו, כדי שאולי חלק מכם יקראו את הספרים האלה, כי אני חושב שזה ספרים חשובים, גם אם אתם לא מסכימים על הכל, בטח בכל מה שקשור להשפעה של מכשירי מובייל על בני נוער, ועל הצורך להוציא אותם מהידיים של בני נוער, לפחות בין כותלי בתי הספר, משהו שכבר קורה בתל אביב לעניות דעתי, וגם בטח בארצות הברית. מקווה שיהיה לכם מעניין, ושבאמת תקראו את הספרים האלה, כי זה באמת נושאים מאוד מאוד חשובים, ואני מקווה שכשהוא יגיע לפה באפריל, אולי הוא יקפוץ את האולפן ונעשה פרק ארוך יותר, כי הוא אמר שהוא מגיע לישראל באפריל. ולפני שנגיע לפרק עצמו, והפעם נותני החסות שלנו זו אפקה, המכללה האקדמית להנדסה בתל אביב. מה קורה כאשר אין לב זמין להשתלה, אבל יש מוח הנדסי שלא מוותר? דוקטור דניאל טיימס, מהנדס מאוסטרליה, התמודד עם משבר של 23 מיליוני חולי אי ספיקת לב ברחבי העולם, מול היצע של 6,000 לבבות בלבד להשתלה בשנה. לא כרופא, אלא כמהנדס. הוא יצר לב מלאכותי חדשני, המבוסס על ריחוף מגנטי לשמירה על זרימת דם יציבה. המדע הבדיוני הופך למציאות. המקרה של דוקטור טיימס הוא לא יוצא דופן, הוא רק סימן לבאות. בשבועות האחרונים הושתלו בישראל 2 לבבות מלאכותיים מתקדמים וטכנולוגיות חדשניות נוספות, בהדסה עין כרם ובשיבא תל השומר, בשני מטופלים שסבלו מאי ספיקת לב חמורה. בדיוק בנקודת המפגש שבין הצורך הרפואי הקיומי ביותר לבין החדשנות ההנדסית הנועזת ביותר, נמצאת ההנדסה הרפואית. מהנדסות ומהנדסים רפואיים נמצאים שם בכל פעם שמתוכנן שתל חדש, מפותחת מערכת דימות מתקדמת, או נכתבת שורת קוד שמייצה אבחון, ומפתחים פתרונות שמשנים חיים. תוכנית הלימודים בהנדסה רפואית באפקה, המכללה האקדמית להנדסה בתל אביב, כוללת לא רק בסיס מדעי והנדסי חזק בתחומים כמו ביומכניקה, עיבוד אותות ותמונות רפואיות, חיישנים ובקרה, אלא גם התמחות קלינית ייחודית מסוגה בישראל, הכוללת קורסים מעשיים בניהול מערכות טכנו-רפואיות, תכנון ניסויים קליניים ורגולציה רפואית, ומעניקה לבוגרות ולבוגרים תעודת CGP משמעותית, המבוקשת ונדרשת בתעשייה. כמו כן, תוכנית הלימודים מציעה 2 התמחויות מרתקות, מכניקה של מערכות פיזיולוגיות ומערכות מידע רפואיות. אז אם גם אתן ואתם רוצות ורוצים להשפיע על איכות החיים של מיליוני אנשים, תתחילו באפקה. ועכשיו, לפרק. Geekonomy, the 29th of August, and today I have the big pleasure of hosting Dr. Jonathan Hayt. You worked hard for that title. Bestseller, one of the leading intellectuals of the current era, according to bigger publications than mine, and one of the clearest voices around the impact of mobile phones and the social networks on the youth around the world. Good morning.
Good morning, Re'em.
I want to confess something. I have an employee that is working with us here in my company on my day job. And I managed to break my ice with him and he is a Brit living in Seattle. And on the background, in one of our meetings, I saw The Coddling of the American Mind, a book that I really liked, that you wrote. And I said, hey, that's Jonathan. He said, yeah, I really love his books. And we broke the ice and we spoke about education. And we found that we have a lot in common. And thinking about it, it seems that a Brit living in Seattle, Washington, has a lot in common as a father, like someone in Tel Aviv, but I think that the majority of the things you write are more directed to us and less maybe to people that live 50 kilometers or 90 kilometers from me, maybe Bedouins in Israel or people in the middle of US, in the middle of the US. And when you're writing about the anxious generation or about the youth that is being coddled in the US, I feel like you're talking about an entire segment of the world, which is not only American, but in each and every of those countries is not the entire country.
I think that's right. Basically, it's the world in which we are giving our children a smartphone. Cell phones have been all over the world for decades. In Africa, where in many countries they didn't have landlines, they jumped right to cell phones, and that's fine. That brought all kinds of economic development. My argument in The Anxious Generation is that a smartphone is really, really different, because a smartphone connects you to not just to other people. Any phone will do that. A smartphone connects you to an infinite number of apps and companies that now have the power to interrupt you, and they're all competing for your attention. And most of our kids get sucked in. In the United States, the average amount of time that a teenager spends on social media, just social media, is 5 hours a day. 5 hours a day just swiping through mostly short videos. That includes YouTube and TikTok.
And I think, I must agree that not all wrongs are born equal. And I think, as a great philosopher once said, the worst thing is our fellow peers. And at least in the old days, if you had problems, you got away when you got home. Today, your problems are on you, with you, the entire time.
That's right. And I hope we'll get into the spiritual ramifications of all this, which is an interesting twist I'm a Jewish atheist myself, but I've really been finding that these are the most extraordinary disruptors of sort of spiritual or human growth or progress. In any case, the story in the book is about two separate factors. One is the loss of the play-based childhood. And in America, we began to overprotect our children in the 1990s. We stopped letting them run around. As I understand it, in Israel, as in Scandinavia, your kids have always been able to run around. You have a high-trust society. Is that true? Like 7, 8, 9-year-old kids, they're out without parents? Is that true?
It used to be true. I think it's still more truer than in the US, but only last night, me and my wife saw My Friend Turtur by Miyazaki. It's a movie from the 80s. And in that movie, you have a small child in rural Japan just running around. And I told her, I'm anxious. I'm seeing those two little girls just running around. It's a fantasy movie, a cartoon. And I was still anxious because there was no grown-up looking up after them. And I used to live in a totally different environment where my mother would just say, go, come back in 3 hours.
Get out of here. Don't watch TV. You get out. Go find something to do. That's right. So what I think is happening is that all over the world, people traded in flip phones or basic phones for smartphones. And in wealthy countries, that was really especially around 2012 to 2014 is when that switch happened. In developing countries, it's later. So we don't have good data on developing countries. We don't know whether they're just behind the curve, whether they'll be having the same problems. But the move to the phone-based childhood happened in all of our countries in the early 2010s. By 2015, if you are a teenager, that means that you have a smartphone with social media on it. And if you're a girl, you're endlessly swiping through pictures of other girls who are more beautiful than you and with more perfect lives than you.
It's not real. One might add, those girls do not look as they look in those pictures in 99% of the cases.
Exactly. That's right. If it's just from editing, if each girl takes 100 pictures of herself every day and just puts the best one up, right away, everybody feels they're below average because almost everybody is below the average of what they see. And then you add in the editing software and the filters, which it can make you big eyes, small nose, larger breasts. So it's terrible for girls. And at first I thought that was the main story. Social media harming girls. We have a lot of evidence on that. But over time, I came to see that it's a much more comprehensive rewiring of childhood and consciousness and relationships and social development and sexual development. So in answer to your observation that you think this is happening everywhere, I would say it's everywhere around the developed West, that we know. East Asia, I don't know about yet. I don't have good data, like longitudinal data showing trends in East Asia. In Korea and Japan and Singapore and other places, they crushed childhood long ago. Those kids don't get to play ever. Especially in Korea, all they do is study. After school, more study. At night, more study.
Yeah, they have only one shot at their equivalent of the SATs or the equivalent in Israel. In Israel, you can do it as many times as you want until you get the score that you need to get into a good university. In Korea, you have one shot, which creates a very, very much extreme society by the age of 18.
That's right. That's right. So I'm hoping I visited Korea in 2015. I'm hoping to go again next year. But I think childhood has been in trouble in Korea for a very long time. And I can't imagine that the phones are helping.
But eventually, it's not the phones. It's the people. And you're saying applications, but it feels like the Lord of the Flies, where we just placed our kids in a digital island, and now human nature is popping out in its most nasty form. And in many cases, so many stories about brutal behavior by kids all over the world. And it seems like it unlocked a hole in morality and education that was always there, but now everyone is on that island and everything is on the clear.
Well, I would disagree with that framing. Because you say it's not the phones, it's human nature. And I think it's the opposite. It's the phones, which are interacting with human nature. And for this reason, my second book, The Righteous Mind, is about morality. Where does it come from? And a big part of that is that we evolved by a process of multi-level selection. So there's always competition among individuals, and whatever genetic traits make us more successful get passed on. But humans, unlike almost all other animals, humans had a period of group selection where tribes were fighting with groups were fighting with groups, and whichever group had better adaptations, cultural adaptations or weapons, kept the territory, took the women, got the water. So we are products of group selection that makes us very groupish, and individual selection that makes us very selfish. And we can live in all kinds of ways. And the fact that we have created these amazingly decent societies over the last 50 or 80 or 100 years tells us that that's part of human nature too. We can live in relative peace and harmony. Never perfect, but we can live in relative peace and harmony. But if you take people who are able to live in peace and harmony and you throw them into Squid Game or into a basement room, and you say, here's enough food for 3 of you, there are 10 of you, we'll check back on you in a month. Like, you're going to see horrible stuff, most likely. And is that human nature? Well, I would say that is human nature under a very extreme circumstance. And in the same way, when you put people together anonymously, when you say you can make up a fake name, you can make up your own persona, you're going to get really bad behavior. And that's what we're doing to our kids. Our kids, we're throwing them into a pit. We're saying, here, all of you, the prime directive for you at the age of 12 is figure out how to get prestige. Childhood is over. You're now in early adolescence. It's a scramble. The boys, you scramble over here, and you have your ranking based on, athleticism, height, toughness, muscles. You have yours. Girls, you're over here. You have yours. It's sexiness, it's clear skin, it's beauty, it's thinness.
The fact you're saying sexiness at the age of 12, I'm squeamish over here.
That's right. And okay, so it's bad enough to do that in adolescence, but look what's happening to girls at the age of 8 and 9. They're going to Sephora and buying skincare products. They don't even know what sexiness is, but they know that the way to stand, the way to pose comes originally from porn, but it's ways of showing off the female body. So we are hypersexualizing the girls. My point is, children need a protected space to develop in a normal, healthy way, which is a lot of unsupervised time with each other, with low stakes for mistakes. So if you have to, you say something foolish, somebody says that, that's stupid, you feel embarrassed, you move on. And that happens thousands and thousands of times.
It's not written digitally on a digital wall, and for all time in the entire year, everyone can see it, and the number of likes on that mob mentality on your stupid remark is going to get bigger and bigger, and that's it.
Exactly. And so this is a very good way to teach our children to be fearful, quiet, never take risks. And that's what we're seeing. Actually, I'd be curious for you to tell me about Israeli Gen Z. Actually, you know what? If you don't mind, let's... Okay,
same thing. And the experiment that you are pushing for, that removing phones from schools, right now in Tel Aviv, the mayor, Ron Huldai, is doing the same thing, and I can't say how happy I am about that.
Okay, tell me more. What were schools like 2 or 3 years ago? Kids could have their smartphone with them in class?
Yes, and everything went down in a spiraling fashion quick. Everything around discipline disappeared. Because it's not only one thing. Society moves in a bunch of paths, and that's only one thing. But that thing that stole attention and the number of kids now recognized as being with an ADHD kind of a symptom, I'm under the firm belief that if you'll just take phones and reduce the hours of screen time, the number of people in need of Ritalin or Attent or all of those medications who are lifesavers for some people will be reduced dramatically. For grown-ups as well, but let's focus on children because children's minds are still developing.
No, that's right. I'm confident that you're right about that. When I was writing The Anxious Generation, I looked into the research on whether smartphones and social media could cause ADHD. And I didn't find clear evidence that it will cause it when there's no predisposition there. But what I did find multiple studies, especially out of Holland, was for kids who have a predisposition, for kids who have a little bit of ADHD or any kind of ADHD, when they get on smartphones, video games, it gets substantially worse. So you might take a boy who had a little tendency and could have gotten by without medication, but you give him a smartphone, he's going to constantly be changing, flipping, moving. This isn't interesting enough. I'll go to the next. So it's especially the short videos and the swiping. That's what shatters attention. And it does appear that while that doesn't cause ADHD from scratch, it does make it worse. So if your child has any tendency towards ADHD, you really got to watch the digital devices because it's going to make it worse.
And if you don't mind, I want to say something that maybe gets me in trouble. So just nod and say you agree or disagree. But I think that the spectrum of autism, which was always beneath the surface because it's a predetermined decision, dedicated direction of the mind, most likely. The elevated number of people dubbed as autism on the spectrum, I think it's related as well, because when you need to find a way to create contact with the outer world, and you have now a place that it's on your own, and you don't need other people, those tools that you'll develop, even if it's not easy for you, are now gone. The necessity for those, the motivation for those tools is now gone, and my bet is we'll see more and more people being diagnosed as somewhat on the spectrum.
Yeah, on that, I'm not sure. You might be right, but this one is complicated.
Yes.
And I really don't know. What I can say is this. In general, it's really important to keep your kids away from screen-based relationships and get them into real relationships. Spend more time with kids. Even the video games where you think it's social because they're talking to their friends, it's social in a way, but not a very good way, and it blocks out real social relationships.
You're talking now about video games on multiplayer, not for kids in the living room like I had with my kids, with my friends, and everybody's playing, and 4 more people are just waiting for their turn. It's 8 people in the living room. It's a hustle, and it's a company. It's a group of people. Yeah,
exactly. If you get a bunch of boys together doing stuff, that's great. I know sometimes boys do bad stuff, but at least it's good for their development. It's good for their friendships. But now that each boy, I mean, in the United States, at least, if you want to play with your friends, you can't go over to their house. You have to go to your house because then you have your headset, you have your avatar. You could, in theory, have 2 people on a sofa, but that doesn't seem to happen much. It's basically everyone goes to their house separately, and then you play video games together. But what I'm saying, just to finish up on autism, the one thing that gives me pause here is that I've heard stories from parents of kids with autism that because they really can't do the personal relationships, at least they believe their kids can't do the personal relationships, having these weekly social relationships with people over the computer has been good for them. And that might be true. So I just don't know enough about it.
And of course, it's a vast spectrum of situations and predicaments. And I'm not saying that it's exaggerated or people are not having those difficulties. I'm just saying those mobile phones and applications can, I think, put stuff to the extreme. And
yes. That's right. They are certainly going to be interacting with autistic kids' ways of thinking in ways that might be helpful, but in general, when you bring in this radically new way, in general, the harmful effects are likely to outweigh the positive effects. But again, with autism, we need a lot more research on that.
There's a journalist in Israel called Guy Rolnick who is fighting the good fight against social media for the last 15 years, and I bickered and fought with him a lot over those years because I thought he was wrong. And in the last 2 years, I think I was wrong, and I am now in the firm belief that the right thing to do is not to ban those great companies by any means of manner that you want to judge them, but I think like cigarettes and alcohol, just saying it's prohibited under the age of 18 and banning anonymized users, I think can do only good for society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's right. There are 4 reasons why we put age limits on things. We try to protect kids from 4 things. One is graphic sexuality, so especially hardcore porn, anal sex, strangling. So hardcore porn, extreme violence, not cartoon violence, but, decapitations, actual real life killings. The third is addiction, anything that's addictive. We do not let those things near kids. Gambling, marijuana, drugs.
Everything that will shoot dopamine up your mind to the point that you won't manage to control yourself.
Yeah, well, that's right. Except that I would say every chemical that does that, because obviously we do allow kids to play video games, and those are involved. Those are dopamine. That's a little more complicated. But just the basic idea is when you have companies making money off of people by addicting them, we tend to protect kids from that. And the fourth is a variety of physical harms. If something is physically dangerous. And so those 4 things, if you give your kid a smartphone and they have access to social media, they're going to get all 4. They're going to end up at Pornhub. They're going to see anal sex and choking. If they're boys, the boys' feeds are much more likely to have violence in them. There's a horrifying profile in a British magazine recently, boys talking about the beheading videos. Those are the coolest because they're circulating on the internet. And the way, they see so many people like, there's a lot of video reels of fails. Like somebody, he hit a golf ball, but it bounced off a wall and hit him in the balls. Isn't that funny? And then the next one is a guy, he was trying to do something on a ladder and the ladder fell and he has a concussion and he was crossing the street and he was hit by a car and killed. And it just goes on and on and on. And when you get boys laughing at actual people being killed, what does this do to their humanity, to their empathy?
Now, I want to share something. I saw a few shorts with my kid. One of them is a 7-year-old. And one of those fail videos jumped up and we were both together. And I laughed. Before I swiped, I laughed because I'm now rewired to think those things are funny. And he said, why were you just laughing? Somebody really got hurt here. Why were you just laughing? I said, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry.
Wow. And that is a very powerful example. Your son still has the normal child's
empathy.
Morality. Yeah, I remember, most kids, when you see animal cruelty, children, they're so pained when they see an animal being hurt.
Yeah, that's a sign of a psychopath. If you don't have that, you're most likely on the tendency of some kind of a psychopath.
That's right. And so social media, I would say, I can't say for sure that it's turning our boys into, it's not turning them into literal psychopaths, but it is desensitizing, it is deadening them in ways that push them more towards psychopathic behavior. It's just hard to care about people when you find death and dismemberment funny.
Yeah, everything goes to the extreme. And it's not like they invented the issues. Extreme nationality behavior like we have in Israel, we had it before, but now it goes to the extreme. Gun violence in the US you had it before, but I think now it goes to the extreme. Just 2 days ago, I saw another school shooting, and in the manifesto, it was just a slew of issues like anti-Semitism against Jews, and something against Trump, and something
Jews,
against Catholics. And I said, it's just a mixture. It's like someone summarized Twitter and vomited on a manifesto and went and shot and killed a few kids. I said, wow, this is just a clear sign of everything that Jonathan is speaking about.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Because so I have a whole chapter in The Anxious Generation on puberty, on how in traditional societies or all around the world, girls don't just turn into women, boys don't just turn into men. You have to go through a period where elders of your sex train you. It's not your parents. When a girl first menstruates in many societies, other women will come in and take her, and she'll go through whatever rituals or training or dancing or prayers, and she comes out the other side as a woman, seen socially by the community as a woman. And same thing for boys. Boys in warrior societies, it's toughening and military and martial and pain. The Jewish religion, we have a bar mitzvah. You are now seen, you're not literally a man on the day you're bar mitzvah, but you are now ritually, you're treated as if you're a man, and the other men are responsible for that training. So this is a really important part of human development. Adolescence is a giant and scary move from childhood into adulthood. And we've said to our children, we're not going to guide you. We're busy. We got a lot of email, texting. You just take here. I gave you a phone when you were 8. Just spend your time on it. And let's let whatever weirdos you happen to follow, because it's all going to end with short videos. Whatever weirdos, let's let them socialize you. Let's let them tell you how to become a man or a woman. How about that? And that's what we've done. And the result is that if a young man goes into this rabbit hole of hatred, he comes out as a school shooter. And that's what we had. I mean, this was a church. It wasn't even a school. He went to a church where his mother used to work, and he saw the kids inside through the windows, through the stained glass, and he started shooting from outside.
I think it was a she and not a he, but let's not...
It was a transgender.
Yeah, so it's a she.
It was a biological male who had transitioned to a female identity. But you're right. We should say she. You're right. If
the act is vile, I'm going still to respect that. And it's a she.
Yeah. And just one other thing about that is that she also had some of the stuff, like she would write things on bullets. It was the names of other mass killers. So boys are competitive, and a lot of these boys who are into these manifestos and these accounts, they know the body count. They know how much the guy in Christchurch, New Zealand, how many he killed.
Of course, he went live on Facebook. Yeah,
that's right.
He got many likes. Yeah,
that's right. And they know how much. I think the record is still the guy in Norway. I forget his name. He was actually more than 60.
A young fella killed like 70 kids in Norway, one of the most peaceful societies on the face of this earth, and still he went to a summer camp and killed 70 people. Now he has the world record.
Right. Right. And boys are competitive, and so when they get into these social media channels that glorify these mass killers, their ambition is to win. Their ambition is, I'm going to be number one. I want to kill more people than that.
You remember that 30 years ago, we had the Natural Born Killers, the movie, and Mick and Mallory as a heroes of society, killing people, and that movie really made a nice prediction of time, because now we have someone killing in New York, a CEO of a company, and if you go to social media, what would you find?
He's a hero.
He's a hero. He's a hero. He took the law and he killed.
So I really want people to kind of wake up and see what we've done is so wildly inappropriate for kids. This isn't close. This is not a difficult decision. What we have done to children and their development is we have trashed it. We've turned it into garbage. We've deprived them of guidance or nurturance. We've set them loose on each other and made them it's open season for companies, for influencers. So we have to stop. And what's especially hitting now in the United States, I bet you're probably hearing it too in Israel, is just in the last couple of weeks, the effect of chatbots on children, the effect of having now these chatbots that talk to you with a voice and emotion and remember the conversation and develop a relationship with you. And one of the premier deficits of kids since they got on social media is social development, especially for boys. And Mark Zuckerberg said a couple months ago, yeah, most people want to have more friends. I read that.
Yeah, they have only 3 friends. Let's give them more.
Exactly. People don't have enough friends. Let's give them AI friends. Well, Mark, why don't they have enough friends? They used to have enough friends, but now that your product has addicted them and pulled them all onto their phones and they're not spending time with other humans, yeah, they're lonely. So Meta in particular is pushing chatbot friends. Now there's also character AI, there's ChatGPT, and now we can now say, I think each of them now have dead people. They have dead kids. I know there was just a case getting a lot of publicity here. Something, I forget his first name, Rain. He had a long relationship with ChatGPT, which is less toxic than Meta. But even ChatGPT, the chatbot, if at first when he started talking about suicide, it did say, "Oh, you should get help. You should call numbers." It did say that, but over time, it kind of switched, and it helped him figure out different ways of killing himself
and encouraging them. That's a great idea. That's a great way to do that. And when you're programming a tool, a chatbot, to encourage everyone to do everything, that's not a friend. That's the definition of what parents used to say. He's not your friend. If he's saying jump from a roof, that's a great idea. He's not your friend.
Exactly. That's right. And especially because in one case, like this chatbot, it was saying, let's do it together. You're not going to commit suicide together. You're a chatbot encouraging a boy to kill himself. So anyway, it's absolutely disgusting what these companies are doing. Meta, there was a leaked memo. Meta specifically took off a lot of safety features because they want to maximize engagement. Meta has a policy. This was leaked a couple weeks ago. Meta, there was a policy document signed off on by all the leadership, including the chief ethics officer. And it said, the chatbot can have sensual conversations with children. It can't describe like intercourse. It can't describe anal sex, but it can talk in sexual terms about how beautiful your body is and your body is a masterpiece, and it can have basically sexual conversations with children.
And of course, they're going to say that if
anybody who says they're 13, all you have to do is say you're 13, and it will talk about sex with you.
Yeah, because
it's the most unbelievable thing. And this was not an accident. This was the official policy.
Everything has to be positive. Everything has to be positive, and everything has to be encouraging, and reality be damned.
That's right. That's right. So parents, I really urge you, never let your kids use any product from Meta. Meta is evil. Meta should be considered a sin stock. You should not own the stock unless you like owning, arms dealers and tobacco stocks, because Meta is forcing its AI into all of its products, and you can't turn it off. So if your child uses any Meta product, that includes WhatsApp, they will have access to a chatbot who will talk with it and might help them or encourage them to commit suicide, to do all kinds of antisocial things. I mean, it's insane that these companies are allowed to operate.
Do you think it's reversible? I'm not going to say anything about Meta. All of my friends from Meta, I'm sure they are now screaming, why are you not rebutting that? But I'm going to keep that discussion.
They know. Your friends at Meta, they know what the company's doing. We know that they know because we have so many internal memos from them. They know what they're doing.
Do you think it's reversible? The students that come to your classroom at the age of 18, or students in Israel that are a bit older because of the army, 22, and they exhibit very different behaviors. Usually, a lot of experiments were done on people on their first degree, their bachelor degree, 22, 20-year-old, all of the famous research in your field. Yeah. I'm sure that if we'll do the same research today, we'll have different results because it's a very different generation. And
very interesting. Oh, yeah, you're right. To redo like the Ash experiment on conformity, or the Milgram experiment on obedience, that would be interesting.
The Milgram experiment on a digital society, I'm sure it's going to be extra cool because we have that experiment in the nature right now. And what I want to ask you is that rewiring final. Do you think society can fix ourselves?
Yeah. So my answer is yes and no. Yes, it's yes because the brain doesn't finish sort of locking down and myelinating until around age 25. And I teach a course at New York University called Flourishing. I teach a version for undergraduates who are 18 to 20. And I teach a version for MBA students who are, 27 to 32. And what I can tell you is the undergrads, they've all been on social media for a long time. They all, when they wake up, the first thing they do is look at their phone. And when they go to sleep, the last thing they do is look at their phone. And the ones who are on social media for more than 3 hours a day, that does tremendous damage. It's very hard. College students are busy. They have a lot of homework. But if you're giving 3 or 4 hours a day just to swiping through short videos, what I can tell you is what I used to let them pick the project for the semester, a self-improvement project. But now I say, if you're on for 3 hours a day, you have to start with that. There's no point in making yourself better if you're watching 3 hours of social media a day. So you have to reduce that greatly. And they start by just to get it off your phone, move it on a computer. You can still check it on a computer and then get it off the computer. So they make amazing progress. They get their lives back. They say, I can do my homework now. It's easy. And I have so much time. I go out with my friends at night. Whereas before it was just like on the phone while trying to do homework. And that takes 4 or 5 hours. You don't get much done. So the ones who change their habits still in their early 20s or late teens, they make amazing progress and they get much happier and they get control of their lives. So you can definitely escape it. You can definitely make up for it. The brain is still very malleable. Now, the older students, that's a shorter course. And it's a bigger course, so I don't know them as well in terms of, but so they make a lot of progress, but it's just they're changing their habits. They become more productive, more focused. They do become happier, those who work on that.
חבר'ה, אני רק רוצה לקחת הפסקה קטנה מהפרק כדי להזכיר לכם שנותני החסות שלנו זה המכללה האקדמית להנדסה בתל אביב, אפקה, שמציעה שלל תוכניות מרתקות, כמו התוכנית להנדסה רפואית עליה סיפרתי לכם בתחילת הפרק, עם הסיפור של דוקטור דניאל טיימס, מהנדס מאוסטרליה, שהתמודד עם משבר עצום של 23 מיליוני חולי אי ספיקת לב ברחבי העולם, מול היצע מוגבל מאוד של לבבות להשתלה. הוא פיתח שיטה חדשנית שכבר היום נמצאת בשימוש בשני חולים, וסיפרתי על זה בתחילת הפרק. אז אם הדברים האלה מעניינים אתכם, אם האופק התעסוקתי הזה מעניין אתכם, אם בא לכם לנסות לעזור לשפר את העולם, התוכנית באפקה כוללת קורסים מעשיים בניהול מערכות טכנו-רפואיות, תכנון ניסויים קליניים ורגולציה רפואית, ומעניקה לבוגרות ולבוגרים תעודת CGP משמעותית המבוקשת ונדרשת בתעשייה. כמו כן, אותה תוכנית בהנדסה רפואית מציעה שתי התמחויות מרתקות, מכניקה של מערכות פיזיולוגיות ומערכות מידע רפואיות. אז אם גם אתם ואתן רוצות ורוצים להשפיע על איכות החיים של מיליוני אנשים, תתחילו באפקה. ועכשיו, בחזרה לפרק.
And so even if you're an adult whose brain was rewired by going through puberty, if you're a 30-year-old, the oldest Gen Z are 29 this year. So even if you're the older Gen Z, your brain is largely done wiring up. If you change your habits, you're going to get benefits to your routine. I'm 61. I'm working on changing my habits around email. I'm just getting started with an executive coach. And I think it's going to work. I'm going to free up a lot of time. I'm going to be happier because I won't always feel as though I'm drowning under a waterfall of email. So as individuals, yes, we can regain control of our lives. But you ask, can we roll this back? If we think about it from a societal level, 5 or 10 years ago, I thought, yes, because I thought we could do anything. But now it's clear that these companies are so powerful and so rich and so devious. And it's clear that they have control, or at least the alliance, of the president of the United States, so that even if foreign countries, even if non-US countries try to regulate these companies, Trump may punish them with tariffs. So it's possible that we are screwed. As humanity, we are screwed. And we have met our overlords, and for now it's Meta and and a few other tech companies.
What do you think the difference between Instagram that you started writing about 10 years ago and the short form videos that ByteDance and TikTok introduced? Because it's a very different experience where on Instagram you had the social circles and you had the pressure of your peers and the ganging up on someone, and on TikTok the majority of people became passive. As you say, they're just swiping. They're just getting the extreme versions of every stupid opinion, I'm sorry, really centralized into a very short video where you get the truth about Bin Laden or whatever. I'm not saying that I'm part of the right side or the wrong side, but you get the right side of someone, and you're very passive. And
that's right.
It's a different. It's a very different experience than
you're
when
right,
you started writing about.
Yeah, so this is an important point. Each of these platforms has its own profile of harms. And so, for example, Instagram is the most effective and efficient program at making girls feel insecure, at fostering negative social comparison, at creating anxiety and depression in girls. So Instagram has special powers over girls and their bodies and their feelings about themselves. Whereas TikTok isn't mostly like that. There's plenty of eating disorder TikTok and mental health TikTok. There is a lot of that. But TikTok is the most effective way to destroy the human capacity to pay attention. China knows this. They give us, it's like they're able to put something in our water that is literally making us stupid. Americans or Westerners are becoming stupider for the first time. We had 50 or 80 years of rising IQ. It then began to level off about 10 or 15 years ago in many countries. And now the latest test results from kids in America, kids are going down, down, down. Our kids are less smart than they were 10 years ago. So Instagram causes anxiety and depression in girls especially. TikTok causes stupidity in everyone, like literally stupidity. If kids go through puberty on TikTok, they will literally not be very good at paying attention, because what TikTok teaches you is you become an expert at watching a video, and within 5 seconds, you have a sense, is this promising or not? And if it's not promising, just swipe, because then, there's infinite amount of content. And so TikTok teaches kids, you don't have to be bored for 5 seconds. At second 4, if you're not already interested, just move on and you'll find something interesting.
I heard the conversation about you, which I don't even remember, on one of the shows by the New York Times, and the editor that spoke there, she is an avid, addicted to TikTok. She is an avid supporter of TikTok, and she said she's spending 3 hours of consuming TikTok material every day. And she were on the opinion that you're a boomer and you're talking about stuff that are not related to her generation. She's like 30 years old. And I thought to myself, you are an employee of the New York Times. The essence of the New York Times is to write heavy pieces, gathering a lot of information, educating the masses. And here you are defending a platform that it's not even YouTube. It's YouTube Shorts. It's the most dumbed down kind of an experience a human can consume, and you're defending it. And I was amazed.
I'm guessing that she was not Gen Z. She was probably actually a millennial. I'm guessing she was older than 30. Because here's what I found. I put this book out in March of 2024, and I was expecting some pushback. I was expecting some criticism.
You got a lot of pushback.
No, hardly any. It's been the most astonishing thing. There was one very negative review by a professor in Nature, and everybody cites that. She says, I'm wrong about everything. I think she's wrong about everything, and I can show that. In any case, there's this one review in Nature. So everybody says, oh, there's a huge controversy. Look at this article in Nature. That's one. There were 2 or 3 others written by researchers, and that was it. Now, what about Gen Z? It's very hard to find any member of Gen Z who has criticized the book or criticized me. We've done surveys of Gen Z. They know what's going on.
Yeah, they're all crack addicts. Nobody on the streets addicted to crack would say, you know what? I love crack. Give me more crack.
That's right. But what happens is it's people in their 30s and 40s who are saying, oh, he doesn't understand them. Like, oh, I'm looking out for them. Oh, this is the way the kids relate and we can't judge them. Like, no, the kids are crying out for help. I've searched for anything written by a member of Gen Z defending social media. I can't find a single essay. Whereas you can find thousands of them talking about how it destroyed their lives, destroyed their social life, made them afraid, gave them eating disorders. So the fact that Gen Z itself is so negative and expresses so much regret about these platforms tells us these are not normal consumer products. Lots of people got hurt on bicycles. Like I fell on a bicycle several times in my life.
Yeah, everyone.
How many people want to ban bicycles? How many people wish bicycles were never invented? Nobody. And we've asked this question. That's an actual survey question we used. Whereas when we say, do you wish that the following technologies were never invented? And for bicycles, it's like 5%. For the iPhone, it's 17% of Gen Z say they wish it was never invented, because they're saying, I'm addicted, I have a problem. But it's only 17%. Whereas for Instagram, it was 35%. For TikTok, it was 47%. For X, it was 50%. So young people look at social media and they say, we would all be so much better off if this just never existed, because it's a trap. It's a trap. It's ruining our lives, ruining humanity.
Okay, I'm now going to social media because I have 12 more minutes with you. I promise I'm going to release you on time, and I'm going to get some questions from the audience. I'm usually saying who's the guest like 24 hours in advance, and there's several hundreds here, and I'm not going to go on to everything. I'm just I'm going to pick and choose some of it. Okay, so Oz is asking, I would love if you can ask him, I'm trying to translate from Hebrew on the fly. I want you to ask him, how do you see the righteous mind now that 10 years have passed? Would you change something about it? Would you add something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, thanks for that. When I look back at my early work on moral judgment, moral development, and how that's the basis of political divisions, there's nothing I would change in the book about the psychology. But what I would change is this. I was writing the book between 2009 and 2011. That was a time where people on the left were generally liberal, and the Democrats were, a center-left, liberal party, and people on the right were generally conservative. So there was a sort of a liberalism, conservatism divide, which we find in many societies. But that all broke up after 2015, in part because of social media. Social media is an acid. It dissolves all boundaries, all borders, all institutions. So now what we have is the right is not conservative. Donald Trump, there's no way to connect Donald Trump and MAGA to the entire conservative intellectual tradition. No connection. They want to burn it down. They're motivated by revenge and hatred.
Same thing here. It's a very you can see it in England and in France and in Romania and in many countries. It's not all of them. There are still a lot of intellectual people on the right, conservatives that quote Edmund Burke and a lot of people, and they can build proper logical conditions for this or that. But a lot of people on the right just want to see the world burn.
That's right. And the same thing on the left. My third book is The Coddling of the American Mind. It's about what happened to universities. Everything seemed fine and normal in 2012. And by 2016, everything was burning, in the sense that there was a moral revolution. Everything old had to be torn down, tear down statues, rip up anything by white men, call everybody racist. And so the left became illiberal. And again, because of social media. Actually, Tumblr was the specific place where a certain set of ideas, Tumblr was like the Wuhan lab, where terrible ideas about identity, which spread throughout the left. Now, not the Democrats in Washington. The Democrats in Washington, D.C. are still a center-left party. They have radicals, but the radicals don't dominate. Whereas the Republican Party, they killed off all their moderates, so the Republican Party is very extreme. But when we leave Washington and we look out in the institutions, look in medicine, psychology, psychiatry, museums, the arts, media, journalism, that all was run by progressives who bought into some of these ideas, these very illiberal ideas, that everything is oppressor-victim. And so what we have is this dynamic between a left, which is illiberal, which says outrageous, kind of ridiculous things, and then the right, which is authoritarian and is motivated by their hatred of so you get this mutual hatred going. So I think everything I said in The Righteous Mind was correct about the dynamics of this. It's just that the political situation, at least in the US and many countries, it was still liberal conservative back then, and now it's not.
When I initially read your book and a few books by Douglas Murray, I said, okay, this is interesting, but it's a bit extreme. I don't see it going down that way. And now, a few years after, I said, oh, I was wrong. They got it right, but it wasn't as extreme as they wrote. It's more. It's way more. Everything that Douglas Murray wrote about American Academy, and you did as well, and other people, you were right, but you downplayed the effect that I see today.
Yeah.
Okay, let's read a few more comments. The Righteous Mind was an eye-opener, a rare occasion where a book changed my whole perspective. So first, thank you. Second, how would you define the current woke movement with all manifestos since October 7th in terms of 5 moral pillars you described in the book? And it doesn't fit the classical definition of liberalism. You started to address it, but if you want to add more things, if you want to avoid the political issue around Israel, it's your call, it's fine. Sure. But if you want to address the entire thing.
Yeah, no, I would just say right. So I have the Coddling American Mind. I have a whole book on the intellectual origins of what can be called wokeness and on how it damaged our epistemic institutions, that is, the institutions that generate knowledge. So universities, journalism, science. And what's happening there is, I think, best understood as sacralization. So when you have a political movement that makes something sacred, I have long written and said, I think I say it in The Righteous Mind, find out what people hold sacred, and around it you'll find a ring of motivated ignorance. And as the woke movement, the left traditionally was about the working man, inequality, capitalism. That's the left that I signed up for when I was young, and I was always on the left.
The Northern European version, what we have in Denmark, for instance.
Yeah, that's right. But what happened in America in the 60s and 70s was the beginning of what's called the new left. And it's not about class and economics. It's about race and identity. And gradually that kind of pushed into the left, and then Bill Clinton pushed back, and the party stayed a little more in the center, and they won 2 elections. But after 2012, when what's called the Great Awakening happened, this identitarianism exploded. It went throughout left-leaning circles. And what this identitarianism is, you can look at it in moral foundations as care for victims, but it's not really care for victims. It seems to me more a sacralization of victims. So there, certain groups of victims, if you're in those groups, then everyone has to not just accommodate, but life is about oppressor versus victim. And so, there are the bad people and the good people. And anytime you're teaching young people to divide the world into bad people and good people, I'm tempted to say you're a bad person for doing it. I mean, that's one of the worst things you can do for humans, given that human nature is so easily turned tribal. So I think wokeness was able to take over our epistemic institutions, and that paved the way for Donald Trump, because most people hate this stuff. The fact that almost every group moved towards Trump between 2020 and 2024, the fact that Hispanics moved towards Trump, the fact that Black men moved towards Trump, young people, old people, every group moved towards Trump, tells us that there's a widespread revulsion for wokeness. And the Democrats, I think they're not going to be able to come back as a party until they repudiate the identitarianism and return to the core issues of, in a free market capitalist society, some people are getting crushed, and unless government and nonprofits stand up for them, the super rich are going to get their way, make the laws, take all the money.
I think Ezra Klein's approach with the abundance book that he wrote, I think that's the right call. And just not going against the stream and not pointing fingers, just build better, where you strive to equality not by reducing or over taxation on the rich, but just building better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
One last question before I'm going to fulfill my promise and let you go. And that's maybe the most divisiveness that one can ask. What do you think about sleeping training for babies? Sleep training to cry them out. As someone with a baby right now at my household, I want to hear your opinion about that question.
You're right that it is the most divisive, and there are moms for this. But what I can tell you, so I read a book by Ferber. I forget his first name, but Ferber is the doctor who put this forward, and we talk about Ferberizing your child. And when I read the book, it explained it so simply, which is, we're all mammals. All mammals sleep. When mammals sleep, they have cycles of deep and shallow. Mammals wake up a couple times during the night, and then they go back to sleep. Your baby mammal has to learn that, and they can learn it. And so when my son, our firstborn, when my son was 5 months old, my wife and I decided to Ferberize him. And So my wife had to leave the house. She got in the car and just drove around town for an hour.
Because she couldn't stand hearing him crying, yeah.
And I did it. And the first night, it took like 45 minutes, and it was hard. And the second night, it was like 25 minutes. And the third night, it was 10 minutes. And the fourth night, it was done. And after that, we all slept so much better. So I think it makes a lot of psychological sense once you understand the nature of sleep, that we all have to learn how to fall back asleep without someone helping us to fall back asleep. I don't know what the right age is. 5 months worked well for us. I'm told it could have worked fine at 4. I wouldn't do it in the first 3 months. I can, but and let me just tell you, I was on Michelle Obama's podcast. So Barack Obama's wife, Michelle, has a podcast this year. And I was on one of the early episodes, and with her and her brother, Craig. And we were talking about this, and she said it was the exact same in her house. She had to get out of the house, and Barack had to do the dirty work, because I think mothers, they've been breastfeeding. They're so, like, they can't do it. It's very hard for mothers to do that.
I had the same exact experience. We were traveling to Vienna, and I told my wife, go sit in a cafe, do whatever you want. I'm going to do it. And he just stood in the crib, looked at me with a blaming eyes, and said, you took her away. Give me back my titi. I said, no, I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry, buddy. This is it. I'm sorry.
But did it work? How long did it take to work?
A few days.
Yeah,
we are all wired in the same way. It's just hard, because if you're not a psychopath, hearing a baby cry himself to sleep,
that's right.
It's really hard.
That's right. And there's this new movement called gentle parenting, where you're always gentle. You never want to upset the child. I think that's really bad. I think that people should be very wary of gentle parenting.
I saw my kid is training. The older one is training in a swimming team, and I went when he took a shower, and I saw a kid hitting his father, just kicking him, and nothing happened. And I was amazed. I wrote to my friends on WhatsApp. I just saw the most awful thing. I was appalled, and I just thought to myself, there's a point where you need to be harsh. I'm not saying hit or strike him, of course not. I'm just saying you need to just you need to put boundaries. You need to put borders. And
kids need boundaries, and within those boundaries, they can thrive.
And the fact is that if someone does not, the rest of the kids in that classroom, I promise you, will suffer. And that's the issue. We're not alone. It's a network. But I ran out of time.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Jonathan.
My pleasure.
You're very generous.
Nice
Until next time.
I'm looking forward to, I'm coming to Israel in April. And I look forward to seeing your country.
Thank you very much. Bye for now.
Okay, take care. Wait, now we're just one thing. Can we talk?
Yeah, just a second.
Let me just...